Hi again. This is Sandy Lou from 460 Realty. And if you already own a home, but you don't live in it, you're going to want to know everything about speculation tax and empty home tax. And today I have with us Bill Rutledge. He's a Notary Public here in town with over 15 years of experience. And he's going to be telling us a little bit about speculation tax. Does it apply to you if you're not currently in your home? Or maybe you have your home up for rental or even just seasonal rental. And he's also going to be telling us maybe there are properties that you own that could be exempt from it. Thank you, Bill, for joining us today.
Thanks, Andy.
So what is the speculation tax? It's something very new as a realtor that we've seen over the last 2 years.
Yeah, the speculation and vacancy tax is relatively new. It's a provincial tax. It's a tax that's designed to cut down on speculation, improve or increase housing rates, etc. So it's a tax to some degree on empty homes that aren't being rented out, homes that aren't being occupied. The province's statistics say that approximately 99% of the population of BC will in fact not pay the speculation and vacancy tax. Speculation and vacancy tax is a tax that's assessed to owners or applied to owners of the property of December 31st each year. December 31st each year, the province finds out who all of the owners are. Early January, they mail out a declaration form for the speculation and vacancy tax to all homeowners. This speculation and vacancy tax is very, again, targeted and specific. It's very specific as to which areas it applies to. Unlike the additional home tax that we talked about earlier, the foreign buyer tax, this one's not applied on a regional district basis. It's applied on a specific city basis, a specific town basis. So for example, where we are in Nanaimo, the speculation and vacancy tax applies in the city of Nanaimo. It applies in the district of Lancefield. It does not apply in the town of Qualicum Beach, doesn't apply in the city of Parksville, both of which are in the regional district of Nanaimo, but it doesn't apply there, whereas the foreign buyer tax would have. And the speculation tax itself is a very complex tax to figure out whether or not it applies to you or doesn't. As I say, 99% of the population, it doesn't apply. There's exemptions for if you own the property, if you have tenants in the property, if you own the property but don't live in it, but a family member lives in it. The application form to apply for exemption from the speculation and vacancy tax is very simple. It's very easy. I just went through one this morning with a friend of mine. They received the notice late January. The notice says that they can apply online or they can phone the province to make their declaration. When they're making their declaration, they basically are saying the speculation and tax does not apply to me, or it does. And if they're saying that speculation tax does not apply to me, they're setting out why it doesn't apply to me. It doesn't apply to me because I live in the house. It doesn't apply to me because my granddaughter lives in the house and I happen to be on the title. So it's a very complex tax. And again, even the areas that it applies to, for example, the city of Nanaimo, it applies to the city of Nanaimo, but there may be exemptions in certain parts of the city of Nanaimo. One of the exemptions I came across is that it doesn't apply to properties where the only access is via water. So without specifically looking on a map to find out where it applies, it potentially does not apply to Gabriel Island, which is part of the city of Nanaimo. So I think it's very important for anybody who is buying a property and curious whether or not the speculation tax would apply to them on that particular property. They need to be very careful and take a look at the provincial government's website to find out which area it applies to, whether the property they're buying applies to that area, and then what those different exemptions are.
Is the speculation tax sent to every household?
It's sent to owners of every. It's sent to the actual owners of the households in those areas. So, for example, if my wife and I owned a house in the city of Nanaimo, they would send a notice to my wife, and they'd send a notice to me asking, and we would each have to file a declaration that we live in the house, and that's why we're exempt from the tax. One of the situations that we see frequently is where we'll have had a properties owned in the name of a person, and their father is on the title of the property for so that they could get their initial mortgage. So that father, because they're on the title of the property, is going to get a speculation and tax declaration that they're going to have to fill out. Potentially a little confusing if the father happens to live in Winnipeg and wonders why he's getting this letter from the province of BC. But again, in that particular case, they would apply for exemption from the speculation tax, on the basis the property is occupied by their child as their principal resident. Or in fact, they may be rented out to a regular tenant. But again, it goes back to the taxes in very specific areas, and generally 99% of the population is exempt from that tax.
So if somebody was looking to purchase, let's say, a vacation home, they want to make sure that the area that they're in may or may not have the speculation tax, because it could affect them if they're not really occupying it year round.
That's where, again, the complexity of the tax is so high that there is a potential exemption for a secondary home. There is a provincial government tax credit to refund you a portion of the tax that you would have paid on secondary residences. And again, it goes back to an individual has to really check carefully to see whether or not something would apply. The speculation tax applies to vacant land in certain circumstances, unless you can show that you're actively building on that property. And again, the government's website has a very detailed definition of what means actively starting to build on a property. So the tax itself is 0.5% of the assessed value for Canadian citizens or permanent residents, and it's 2% for foreign nationals. So if you have a foreign national who's bought a piece of property here in Nanaimo that is vacant, and they are a true speculator, they're going to pay a tax of 2%. And that's each year. It's an annual tax that's, again, homeowners as of December 31st, they have to file the declaration by March the 31st of each year, and then pay the tax by July 2nd, depending on when the holiday happens to fall.
Now, what happens if they don't apply for that exemption, or they don't respond?
If they don't respond, the province would go after them. What their follow-up process is, what their collection process is, I don't know. But the province would go after that particular individual and may potentially, I would assume, garnish their wages, go after their income tax returns, hold back income tax refunds is what they would do if that person lied on their declaration, or if they just failed to fill in the declaration. I know last year was the first year that the speculation and vacancy tax was in place, and I know the province was very laid back, would be a term, that a lot of people didn't fill in the form because they weren't sure about it. The forms were sent out late, and the province wasn't very active in doing anything with it. Whether that will be cracked down in the future is always hard to say once the tax. I do know that the province is still tweaking the tax. If you go to the province's website, you can take a look at changes or finer definitions that they've done, and they were redefining what a commuter residency was, or a commuter occupant was, as recently as middle of December last year. They were defining a specific term. So there's a whole series of exemptions that apply. So again, it goes back to 90% of the homes don't attract that tax, or 90% of the population won't pay that tax.
I see. There's also the empty home tax. How is that different than the vacancy tax?
Empty home tax is a tax. It's a City of Vancouver tax on empty homes. City of Vancouver tax on empty homes is 1%. And again, it's sent out to homeowners as of December 31st in the city of Vancouver, where they make a declaration as to whether or not the home is exempt from the empty home tax because it's owner occupied or because it's rented out to tenants or it's a house under construction, things of that nature. It's if a person is a speculator and they are not, they just have a property in Vancouver that they're not doing anything with, they'd attract the empty home tax from the city of Vancouver, and they'd also attract the speculation and vacancy tax from the province. So they'd be hit with a double whammy of 1.5% to 3.5%, depending whether they were foreign nationals or Canadian citizens, permanent residents.
Okay, so in essence, the empty home tax doesn't really apply to properties here on the island.
No, not at all. It's strictly a city of Vancouver, and by City of Vancouver, it is the City of Vancouver. It's not the Greater Vancouver Regional District. So, for example, it doesn't apply in the City of Burnaby. It doesn't apply in the City of Surrey. It's strictly a City of Vancouver tax.
Oh,
so
I see.
Nobody would have to worry about it here.
Okay. Well, thank you, Bill, for giving us so much information about the speculation tax. I know that there's a lot of homeowners out there that may own multiple properties, and this is such a new tax that a lot of homeowners are sort of worried that maybe they don't fill it out correctly, they don't reply on time, and that they may somehow be affected with an additional tax to their property tax. So for more information, I'm going to put some of the government links regarding speculation tax and vacancy tax below, and then I'm also going to include Bill's information. So if you have any questions or if you need his service, please feel free to contact him. And if you have questions pertaining to any type of real estate property questions, you could also contact myself, and I will also put my information down below. Thank you so much for watching, and hopefully the takeaway is if you receive a notice from the government, you should respond accordingly. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Andy.
Thanks.